What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, word started to go around that Nintendo may have accidentally leaked a new Switch 2 model on their website, at least based on some of the website backend code. And the good news is people aren't talking Switch 2 Pro. No, they're talking about the model that does actually make sense in the current marketplace, and we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about that Resident Evil showcase that happened late yesterday afternoon, because the game looks awesome, but there was one disappointing omission from the entire showcase that we'll go over. And we'll also be talking about Sony, as it seems like they are finally starting to crack down on shovelware that has been a major issue for all these digital storefronts, and I'm hoping this becomes a bit of a trend going forward. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with the amazing market right now for video cards, which have just been going up and up and up, of course, alongside of all the DRAM issues, because some of these cards have 16 gigabytes or more of VRAM, and we heard one of the strategies could be they just stopped making these video cards, and well, we can see this. This is over on Engadget, saying YouTube channel Hardware Unbox is reporting that Asus has stopped producing the RTX 5070 Ti and 5060 Ti due to ongoing memory crunch. And it's important to note that these are 16 gigabyte cards, so it's quite a bit of VRAM to attach to cards that maybe aren't selling for enough, all right? Now, Engadget was able to get a response from an NVIDIA spokesperson. They said, demand for GeForce RTX GPUs is strong and memory supply is constrained. We continue to ship all GeForce SKUs and are working closely with our suppliers to maximize memory availability. So kind of a roundabout answer there, not necessarily confirming or denying what's happening with some of these models like a 5070 Ti or a 5060 Ti with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. We've heard the reports that the 3060 could be coming back, and I think what's going to happen, at least for the next, it seems like year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 8 gigabytes of VRAM is what falls in line with the, I can't even say budget, but like the mid tier of video cards here coming up, and that has been problematic. It's been a concern for people right now. And with the Steam Machine also leaning on 8 gigabytes of VRAM, seems like it's something we're going to be dealing with for quite some time. Also, we did get a look at Lara Croft in the new Tomb Raider series that's coming up for Amazon. You can see, this is from Discussing Film, which has image here. First look at Sophie Turner as Lara Croft. We're still waiting for the release timing or date for this Amazon series. I think they were starting filming to begin 2026, so I guess with how long it typically takes, I'm thinking like 2027, but we do have a remake game coming up here this year, then a brand new Tomb Raider next year. It seems like it'll slot in nicely, I guess, between them, or just at least around that new one coming out next year. And I saw this and just said, yeah, well, I mean, it looks like Lara Croft. Now, there were people who said it looks like a good cosplay. Some were really happy and excited with it. So it's the internet. And of course, it's going to be very divided. But I think it's really going to come down to, of course, the story, the tone, everything else about this, the writing outside of the look of Lara Croft, which I think is, yeah, it's fine. So we'll see how all this turns out when they do release it on Amazon Prime Video, again, I think next year. Oh, and we did get a trailer for Sonic, the 35th anniversary. You can see some of it here. And this popped up and I said, wow, it really has been 35 years for Sonic. It's just one of those reminders how old everyone's getting. But I thought about Sonic Frontiers that came out in 2022. So by the end of this year, it'll be 4 years since that came out. I do wonder if we're going to hear what's next for the big 3D Sonic game at some point, but nothing else. I'm sure they'll do all kinds of merchandise. They'll do some more re-releases. Of course, Sega likes to do that with Sonic, and I'm sure all kinds of other media crossovers and releases. So there you go, 35 years of Sonic. Starting your morning off right, just remembering how old everyone is. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this new Switch 2 model that may have been discovered on Nintendo's own website. Now, this originated, we can see, over on Blue Sky, a social media account with just Sky, saying, I think I've discovered something interesting, but I have no idea what it implies. On Nintendo's account portal, there's an unused model code under the name OSM. The Switch 2's model code is BEE. The portal has images for each Switch model, and requesting OSM returns an image of a Switch 2, and you can see some of that there. Now, Aaron Dews did go a bit more in depth with this, checking with the Wayback Machine, noticing that it seemed to have been added to the site at some point in mid-September, which would imply then, oh wow, they've been playing this out since then, at least adding it in, and someone just now noticed. So is this something that they've been working on behind the scenes to even manufacture? Although I kind of feel like with how quickly things travel around online, we would have heard something, but hey, maybe this is really it. This is what kickstarts people asking about a potential Switch 2 Lite. Now, why are people saying Switch 2 Lite? Well, to be honest, I don't really see many people calling for a Switch 2 Pro right now. I think the big dividing factor for the Switch 1 and what a Switch 1 Pro would have been was 4K, and the Switch 2 does 4K, and I think most people are like, yeah, this is fine. I just want to see what games Nintendo is going to put out and take advantage of this hardware with. So good, we're on the same page there. So Switch 2 Lite does actually make sense. It's something that I think most people are expecting, but would we be expecting it in the first year of the Switch 2? I don't think so. But I do kind of think it might come sooner than the Switch Lite when that came about in the Switch 1's life. Remember, that was like, what, September 2019? So it was after the 2-year mark. It was like 2.5 years in. I don't think Nintendo's going to wait that long because right now, what was their strategy, their suggestion? If you can't afford a Switch 2, this very infamous quote, of course, from Doug Bowser, buy a Switch 1. It's like, okay, well, the Switch Lite, yeah, it went up in price to $230. That's still the floor right now for Nintendo's ecosystem that's on retail store shelves. Yes, you can get used systems and you can get a Wii for, what, $60 now. But for what Nintendo is outright selling and doesn't consider legacy, it's the Switch Lite at $230. So what happens when they stop manufacturing the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 is the only thing on the market? Their floor price then goes up to $450, and that's just if it stays where it is now. It very well could go up to $500 with everything's happening right now with part procurement and the DRAM pricing going up constantly behind the scenes. So Nintendo may need to expedite the idea of having something slot in to fill the Switch 1 generation that I think will be gone probably after, it probably has one more holiday in it, like after 2026, I think Nintendo's gonna be ready to move on, stop manufacturing, stop shipping these systems out to stores. It'll have been almost 10 years of support on the market, and I think Nintendo, after saying, hey, we've already moved a lot of our development over to the Switch 2, think they're ready to sunset that platform and really focus and go all in with the Switch 2. But that means they need something that won't be $450 starting, and I think that's where that Switch 2 Lite comes in. How cheap can they get it, though? That, of course, is the question. If it's $350, it's better, but it's still like, it's still kind of pricey for Nintendo. Could they get it at $300? Then they might have something, because they'll have that $299.9. I mean, it has a psychological effect. We went over that with pricing recently in a story. But $299.9, I think that would be pretty big for Nintendo with pricing going in the opposite direction. Here's a Switch 2 Lite. And it actually wouldn't shock me if they had it for holiday 2026. And I know that seems like very soon, but they already have a lot of the market research done with the Switch Lite being on the market as long as it has been, and they kind of know what to expect, and I'm sure they've seen that there is an audience who just uses their Switch 2 in handheld mode now, so why not take advantage of that and have a Switch 2 Lite ready to go sooner rather than later. And the OSM codename, because people are expecting or seeing Switch Lite, they've already come up with that must stand for ounce smaller model, and that's a little too literal. I think it's almost a little too on the nose. You look at B and it's apparently like translated over to Japanese has a different meaning for it's a whole thing there. But I don't know if I would look at that and be like, oh, that's just, they just have initials. It just stands for something. I don't know about that. So the one funny thing, and it doesn't make sense because OSM does call an image of the Switch 2, is if it was like a new 2DS situation where they did the new 2DS XL announcement out of nowhere randomly after the Switch 1 came out, if they just announced a revision for the Switch 1 and that was like the one system they were going to bring forward and then stop manufacturing all the other Switch 1 stuff now. Now, I think this is something Switch 2 related, but we need more information. At this time, there's something OSM on their system portal for Nintendo when you sign in, and I guess we'll see maybe this year what exactly that is. Next up, let's talk about that Resident Evil showcase that happened yesterday. That was at 5 p.m. Eastern, and it was a pretty quick presentation. I think when I looked online before recording, it was 12 or 13 minutes for the VOD that they posted on YouTube. but there was a lot of good information in there. We're going to go over some of that now. So starting at the top here, Leon. They go, hey, you know what? You guys want to know about Leon? Let's talk Leon. And you know what? The gameplay looks awesome. And I get what they were saying when originally they went, hey, Leon can't be scared of stuff. He can't go around like how Grace is in her gameplay. He's going to be John Wick. All right, he's Leon Wick at this point. And so they focused on improved gunplay, and you can see it. Like, the executions were crazy. So you're like shooting the different enemies in their limbs, and they're like falling over. You run up, melee them, and then honestly just explode their entire head with your revolver. It looked crazy. You can also parry with, he had like a hatchet, so he's parrying different things, including a chainsaw. And then when the enemy got wiped out, he picked up the chainsaw and just cut one of them in half. It was awesome. I mean, Leon, I know, look, Grace has her own part of the game and the story. I mean, Leon's looks like a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm glad they decided to have Leon be part of this game just based on what they've shown. It looks fun. All right, so Grace, though, bit slower here. All right, you're going to rely kind of on stealth, and she does have at least a big revolver that was just blowing people away, but it does seem like she is not going to be the super soldier almost that Leon is, all right? And that kind of makes sense. Again, just based on their mannerisms, their experience level, all that, yeah, you would think that she would be quietly trying to sneak around in shadows and occasionally catching somebody off guard with this massive revolver. The crafting system here, it does use infected blood. You can change between first person or third person views at any time with the menu. There's a collector's edition, there's watches, there's statues. They were merchandising this thing up like crazy, all right? It's out February 27th, so we're about a month and a half away. The unfortunate thing with all of this, and I was sitting there waiting, I'm like, all right, we're getting to the end. All right, this is it. This is where they're gonna pop up and say, a demo's now available. Didn't happen, unfortunately. Yeah, that at least doesn't seem like ahead of release they're gonna do it. This could be a situation where the game comes out, and then for whatever reason, a month later, they go, hey, a demo's out. It's like, great. Could have used that beforehand, just because I want to play the game. Like, I'm already buying it, and Capcom, maybe they already know that. They're like, yeah, what, you're not gonna buy this game if we don't put a demo out there? No, I'm gonna be picking it up. So, yeah, that's the one unfortunate thing coming away from this, is the fact that I can't play it like now. They didn't shadow drop a demo. Otherwise, though, man, it looks good. It's one of my most anticipated games for this year that I guess we know about right now, or at least have seen fully at this time. So exciting stuff. Looking forward to the end of February where we can start playing Resident Evil Requiem or, of course, Resident Evil 9. Next up, let's talk about Sony, as it seems like they're pushing back on shovelware. Finally, if you go on the PlayStation, really any of these digital stores, to be honest, but right now we're focusing on Sony. If you go on the PlayStation Store, it's disastrous. Like, it's up there with Nintendo, where you go to their recent releases and you start scrolling, you just see some of the craziest stuff. Very, very low effort, very much asset flips, AI generated games. It's rough. But Sony does have that issue because, I mean, they have a lot of systems out there. There is a large marketplace to take advantage of if you are some of these different publishers that can put out hundreds of games in a week, it seems like. So it seems that Sony is taking notice and finally taking action. We can see this. This is from Rob, is over on good old Twitter X, saying, all PlayStation games by the publisher The Games or Thigh Games or The Games. Anyway, they seem to be unlisted from the PlayStation Store. They had the 4th most games on PSN. They say it's unclear why. So when they say the 4th most games, they have 1,000, or at least before all this, 1,194 games. I saw that and went, hold on, over 1,000 games? When did they start putting games out? So I started looking around a bit, and like Moby Games, you can look at credits and stuff for releases. And then I also found some like Reddit posts from 2022 where people had referenced this company as really just kind of like just putting a bunch of junk on the storefront. And so 4 or 5 years ago, I guess they started releasing stuff, and they already have 1,100 games on the marketplace. I said, hold on, I gotta see what kind of games they're putting out there, all right? So I start scrolling through their website looking, and this seems to be a company based out of Germany, by the way. And it's like the Jumping Bonbon Match 5, the Jumping Food Racing 2, the Jumping Food Catcher, the Jumping Food Racing, the Jumping Orange 3, the Jumping Bonbon Match 4. It's a prequel. Yeah, so it's a lot of jumping games. I mean, guys, it's just junk, guys. that it's so obvious. And I don't know, maybe Sony said, hey, let's just take a look at some of the companies that are publishing a ridiculous amount of games, like almost the outliers. Okay, why do you have 1,100 games on the marketplace in the last 5 years? What are you putting out? And they just take one look and go, well, I mean, look at this. This is, again, half of it's probably AI generated. It's very low effort stuff that is just kind of gumming up the works for discovery. And that's the biggest thing. If you're trying to hold up a marketplace that, I mean, people can actually go through and find games, it's very difficult when you have 1,000 jumping games that are there in the way because they're $4 or $5, but then they're also on sale 90% off and really they're 50 cents. You know what I mean? So I would like to see more curation like this because then it would make it easier to find like legitimately hidden gems on the marketplace, because there are many, I'm sure, that people have found after browsing for 20 or 30 minutes at this point, or just never come across because it's impossible to sort through all of it. So I'm hoping to see more stories like these when it's just, again, obvious shovelware and junk that's just kind of flooding the market. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Monster Hunter Wilds on PC, which has been notorious for having bad performance that makes no sense. And like the system requirements for it, it's kind of like how it goes with a lot of PC games. They'll give you targeted specs for minimum, then recommended, and you go, that seems kind of high. Then you get the game, you play around with the settings yourself, and for the most part, you can get to a position where you have acceptable frame rate and acceptable resolution and stuff. But Monster Hunter Wilds is weird because people have gone through, played around with settings, and they still get the strangest drops in frame rate that make no sense. It seems like though someone's figured it out, and I double-taked, couldn't believe what I was reading, but get ready to be impressed by Capcom. Let's take a look. This is over on Reddit, where a person went through and did a ton of performance checks, tests, and eventually figured out what was causing the issue here. They say, same machine, same settings, 2 different accounts. One is clean base game, the other has all DLC bought with no high-quality textures installed. On the account with no DLC, I get heavy and stable FPS drops down to like 20 or 25 in hubs, while on the account with all DLC bought, it's 80 plus FPS. You are hearing that right. They conclude the more DLC you own, the better performance you get in the game. Why? Because Capcom focused so hard on microtransactions that they implemented an insanely crooked and aggressive DLC ownership check function. And no, it is not about protection or anti-cheat or whatever. It is just a DLC presence check. So just shout out to Tile, Marinade. Anyway, they seem to have also been in contact with Digital Foundry, so I would expect an entire video from them going over this. The way that they were able to check, by the way, wasn't by buying what apparently amounts to hundreds of dollars of microtransactions. They created a mod that kind of passed the check and just told the game, hey, I own all the DLC. Don't bother checking because it's there. And that seems to be the biggest thing. Kind of reminds me of Denuvo, where that did a lot of checks and kind of stressed the CPU and the system itself and caused stuttering and lower frame rate. And then it turns out that the people who cracked the game open and removed Denuvo, so people who are pirating the game, had a better experience than the people who outright paid for it. So it's just, I don't know what Capcom's doing here other than they really want you to buy the microtransactions, because apparently you spend a couple $100 more on Monster Hunter Wilds and your frame rate gets significantly better. That is, it's wild. It's Monster Hunter Wild stuff at this point. So the thing is, though, people are saying maybe this isn't malicious by Capcom, because who would want their game to run worse when it's not obvious as to what could fix it? And it hasn't been this whole time until now, where someone was able to just kind of stumble across this. And it honestly makes me think that Capcom, as into the microtransaction stuff as they are, legitimately just kind of got by them on this. So the good news then, if that is the case, if we're getting the benefit of the doubt here, we'll say, then they should be able to fix this. And with Digital Foundry shining a spotlight on it, most likely here soon in a video, maybe kicks them into gear, and Monster Hunter Wilds here in a month or 2 gets a full patch, and it'll be good to go. Now, there are mods out there. However, the person here that made this entire post and also made their own little mini mod to get past it recommends not downloading them, because there are just so many out there, and it's hard to say exactly what they're doing with the game when you download it outside of the, hey, it will skip the checks. Again, not sure exactly how far it's going with that. So at this point, I would just kind of sit tight and hope that Capcom gets the information relayed to them, as it seems like this person is also in contact with Capcom, and Digital Foundry brings, again, a spotlight to it, and they are able to patch it, fix it up, and smooth out one of the strangest stories when it comes to PC performance. And I will say, makes you wonder a bit more about some of those other weird situations with these PC games and what oversight could be tripping it up. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is Game of the Year madness and the Cinderella story that is Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake seems to be continuing. You know, I hit submit for this poll and I was like, I'm really curious what happens here because this could be it for Dragon Quest 1 and 2. No! It is currently ahead of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 by 2%. I want to rewind a minute here. Dragon Quest 1 and 2, in the last round, took down Death Stranding 2, a game that was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and now it's up against Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and it is just ahead of it by 2%. Another Game of the Year nominee. It's impressive stuff, no doubt, by Dragon Quest 1 and 2, and hey, I'll give it up to the Dragon Quest community. They're legitimately backing their game here in this tournament. So good to see, I guess, for Dragon Quest then. And it still has a few more hours to run after this video goes live. So hey, if you want Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 to get through, go vote for that. Or if you want to continue holding up Dragon Quest 1 and 2, go vote there. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from the Franctuary. Says, I was not prepared for the wave of nostalgia from hearing the words Hollywood Video. Yeah, okay, so I had to stop and think. I'm in like East Coast, Northeast. What video rental stores do people know about or have heard about or nationwide, worldwide, whatever? Blockbuster, obvious. Everyone kind of knows Blockbuster, but Hollywood Video was one that I remember it came in and it was very corporate and it unfortunately knocked out the small mom and pop video rental store that was in the same shopping center. Here comes Hollywood Video, big store, super professional and fancy looking. The mom and pop stuff, it didn't stand a chance. But then there was like California Video, which is funny because again, East Coast, Northeast, like, oh, California Video. But that was the place I remember that would rent out entire systems. So when my parents were having like a gathering with their friends, getting people together, and a bunch of kids, of course, would also come with them and stuff. Like, hey, let's rent a Nintendo 64 and like 3 or 4 games and 4 controllers for the kids, and they can just play that on Saturday night when we're all upstairs hanging out and chatting and stuff. So that was always the fun one. When they're like, hey, we're going to California Video, I was in my mind, I'm like, okay, what N64 games should we be renting? We need to get GoldenEye, get Mario Kart. We were already like pre-planning on that, like the Friday afternoon on the bus ride home from school. Those were the good days. Now you just open a digital tab and go through Game Pass or some digital sale. It's not like how it used to be, right? Go in there with the big shove. I go on for a while with this. Like, you just look through all the different games. Those are good times. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you want to hear a bit more about the Steam machine and those leaked prices that were going around, and if that's what we should really expect, I did an entire video looking into that, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.